we've covered the global principle, let's get right into the actual defenses against a blade in a scenario. Now you need to understand there's basically two types of scenarios you're involved in. One which is sudden death, which occurs at close range, very quick, very fast, usually multiple fire attacks in close, very, very difficult to survive, and the crucible of which we will focus most of our attention. But the other type of possibility is an attack which occurs at a little longer range, where the time distance variable between you is extended, giving me and him a little bit more reaction time. So in each scenario, basically, what I want to do is first, listen to my instincts. I want to cultivate my instinctive response. So let's talk about the instincts that occur at a longer range scenario, where I have a little bit more time and reaction in here. So instinctively, if I recognize, if somebody reaches for you, comes at you with something in here, instinctively my response should either be to evade or to block. Now, if I have any idea that this person may have a weapon in his hand other than a firearm of some type, what I need to do in here is use my instincts to get away. If I can actually extend the range, if I can get out away from here, then I don't have the timing problems that blocks and everything would bring into this encounter. So let's talk about the principles of evasion, and we're talking about them under three basic conditions. First of all, high gate defenses, and that's usually going to be a situation in which I cannot immediately move my whole body out of the way, but I pull my head out of the way. So in this scenario, what I need to do is react very quickly, but I need to also be aware that when I go out of here and I duck or I pull myself out of this scenario, that I need to recover almost immediately. I need to expect that this person's going to come at me again. If I get wild like this, he's going to cut me on this way into the action. So there's a limited control to your defenses in here as you're defending. So if you do instinctively move in here, what I need to do is get back in a scenario which I can fight almost immediately. So upper gate being pulled back instinctively is this: somebody grabs you by the back of the head in here and just yanks yourself out. Make sure you take your arms with you, but keep them up where if you misjudge, at least I could block or do something in the way if I had to, or shield and protect, right? Next instinct, I need to recognize that there is a secondary attack that could occur to my waist and I may not be able to move out of the way. So under these conditions, it's like somebody grabs the back of my spine or even my belt, and as he comes in here, I pull that part away very quickly. Same principle. I still want my hands out here just in case he comes back with something else too quickly. At least I've got an opportunity to block and protect. But the main thing is to immediately pull this body out of action in here very quickly. And the third is an obvious encounter that goes down toward my legs. Same basic principle: pull myself out, bring my hands up for possible counters that come up into this line or whatever. But make sure that when you do that action in here, that you pull your foot out and that you stabilize almost immediately. So we're going to build on what should be your instinctive response if somebody's got a claw and is slashing at you in some way, just whatever angle comes in. Now usually I will not be able to pull my entire body out unless this attack occurs at a longer range. And if so, that's great. So if he's out here like this and he comes at me, I'm simply going to evade with footwork, with my entire body. But what you need to practice is pulling high gate, middle gate, and low gate out of here first. So you should have somebody hold a weapon behind them in here like this in a basic simple street encounter. I need to pull myself out of this scenario and learn how to recognize when attacks come, regardless of where they come to in that particular line. So a good drill is to get something that you can actually hit with and have somebody come at you in that scenario. The idea that an instinctive evasive response is connected to telegraphing and to distance in this scenario. We want to try to connect a counterattack if we can. The next stage is to learn how to counter from this type of scenario. First things first, and there's two time frames by which I can counter with an evasion, and that is at the end of the act of evading or at the end of the act of recovery. So for example, if he slashes at my face in here like this, the movement from point A to point B where I get out of the way, that's the act of evading. Everything else from this point is recovery, either through escape or bringing myself back into the scenario, into this action. So think of it in two time frames. It's always quicker to counterattack at the end of the act of evading and not recovery, but you need to be able to do both depending upon what you need to do at that scenario, right? So what you have to do is you have to figure out an effective counter that's going to have at least some critical effect on this person at the end of the evasion. Okay, so for example, if this is the point of action here, like this, I pulled my upper body out, very little that I can do other than possibly kick back in here. Okay, so if I pull myself out of the scenario, I need to find something in here where I can literally, boom, cause some damage in this scenario at the end of the act of evading. And I also need to find a technique, okay, in here at the end of the act of recovery, which could be as simple as that, coming right back into the attack, or delivering another technique that you can deliver right at the end of that action in here. All right, so kind of going through each one now, let's take a look at some of the possibilities. If we come in low, and I come out this way, the good part about a middle range attack is that I can deliver, my hands almost immediately. As long as I deliver them quickly and faster, then my body's moving back, right? So literally, notice that I'm not going here, here. What I'm doing is forming this C like this, but simultaneously I'm driving my fist or whatever hand into this action, coming back. It takes a little bit of practice in here, but what you want to do is deliver a very quick counter off of that action. Right? Very few techniques that you can deliver off of that motion. Now I may simply evade, okay, and then just come back in and deliver something. That'd be the end of the act of recovery. All right? Going down to the low gate, very, very similar to that. I pull myself out. Now, if he comes into that gate, I've got to move that foot very quickly out of this action in here. All right, and I need to be able to deliver something. Now, because I'm off balance, it may be a better idea here to go into his face or into his eyes or something that doesn't require a lot of power, because I'm literally pulling my base completely out. So even though you could hit in this scenario, what I recommend you doing is jamming your fingers, boom, into his eye sockets and then following up with something. All right, so no matter what you do, take the time to go through each one of your evasion actions and practice finding a counterattack from every position that you can think of. Okay, now that we've got that idea in mind, I want to make a statement about trapping and controlling. Now, many times you'll see me when I do an action trap or control in here. Now, that's usually only a momentary thing, and it just because it happens to present itself. But when you trap and control, what I'm essentially doing is keeping my tools right in front, between me and him, right in front of my body in this situation. All right, what you will not see is an action which I will sweep or take outside the body like this, because it's just too dangerous in this scenario. But even if a trap missed and my hand is right in here, at least I can do something to control and my weapons are right in front of me. But I need to tell you that you're only going to be able to contact or control somebody if they allow you to, or they give you that weapon. If they're faking or pulling something out in here like this, my hands are going to basically move and not react. But I need to keep them, irregardless in this scenario, where I can fire and cause damage almost immediately. So don't think that you're going to trap and control, and you should not practice any techniques which have grabs or anything of that nature. And if you believe that you're going to be able to grab somebody who attacks you with a blade who's awake and alive and is fighting back, you haven't tried this in real life. So what I suggest you do is get something that you can't hurt with, get another opponent and put him in front of you and say, do not let me grab your hand and then see what happens. And you try to commit to a grab of some type, likely that it's not going to happen. What you may do is be able to trap, at least momentarily, and get him offline, or press or control for a split second. But if you do that, you need to remember to keep your tools right in front, and don't rely upon the trap or the action as your only means of defense. Make sure that if I'm doing this, it's just something to keep in front of me to clear or press or control when I deliver this attack. Okay, the idea is that if I've got some distance in here, I need to use evasion and instinctive response in order to be able to attack and defend in this scenario. But what happens when I'm in close? What happens when there's a couch or a table or a wall or something behind you in which you cannot move, and or this person comes at you immediately? Now, you might be able to block, and that might be your first instinct, and you shouldn't necessarily override that. All right? But what you need to do is realize that if you do this, you're in big trouble as far as the next and secondary attack. All right? So even if my instinct, for instance, is to block off that action, what I need to do is I need to flow immediately into what we call a body shield. All right? This flows off the principle of a dynamic combat shielding, and if you get a chance, check out our shield video because it's got a lot more information on this. But we're going to use primarily what we call a body shield against the edge weapon, and there's several reasons why we do this up front, and they have to do with maximizing my protective cover against my body. All right, so in here, the problem with blocking, even if it's between him and me in close range, is the timing factor, right? We discussed this before in the tactical options. As we're coming in here like this, I literally, as he keeps going and keeps cutting in, I literally have to make sure that each one of my actions are perfectly timed in this motion in order to make this work. I make one mistake and I'm in trouble. I exaggerate the movement, or I misjudge where this thing's coming from. So each one of my actions in a blocking process in here have to be accurate and controlled in order to make this work and effective. That's a big demand on a person's timing, and it's too risky for most scenarios. So we've got to change the game a little bit. Now, in this game, what we're literally going to do now is say, okay, I'm going to get cut, but I'm going to get cut on an area of my body that's less susceptible to injury, that will allow me to survive this fight long enough to end him. Okay? So in the blocking process, I cannot afford this possible action. So what I'm going to do is literally tuck my whole body in here like this and hide behind my arms. Keep them very close to me and move in on this guy in this attack. Now, this is counter to what most people believe they need to do, but if you test this at full speed, this is really about the only way that I can survive, particularly in a scenario in which an individual comes quickly and I hit back quick. Now, the good part about this is I'm loaded for one hellacious attack in here as we deliver this motion. So we get an opportunity to defend against this incoming attack and move forward and deliver a hit almost immediately. So let's talk about the specifics of the dynamic combat body shield. At first glance, most people are going to have a lot of trouble swallowing this body shield. But years of reality testing have taught me that against a swarming type of attack at close range is just about your only option. It's about the only thing I can do. If I cannot evade or escape, I've got to stop his ability to either cut me deeply or to penetrate that knife deep into my body cavity. And I'm going to do that by putting my skeletal muscular structure in close. So he has to fight his way through the bones of my arms and upper limbs and heavy, thick muscles in order to get through to my vital targets. Now, the problem with a blade is touch weapon is access to a variety of different targets very quickly. So if I'm down in here and he comes low and high and I commit down in here, particularly if I commit two of my hands down in here like this, he can come up and cut me in another gate and vice versa. So one of the problems with blocking is having to cover all sorts of different gates and be able to do this well in this scenario. So what we're going to do is say, forget that, we're going to bring our limbs close to us and literally let him come to me at a variety of angles and make minor adjustments with our bone structure, even if we take a cut doing so, to protect ourselves in this scenario so that we don't expose ourselves to immediate and possible lethal attack in here. And at the same time, you need to understand that this is not a stance. We don't sit here and defend ourselves against this guy coming in like this, because what I need to do is finish him. This is just a momentary thing I do to go in until I can wipe this guy off the face of the planet here, which is what I'm really trying to do in this scenario. So if I cannot evade or I cannot escape, now I'm going in. There's no middle ground with an edged weapon. You don't stay out and try to block at a range. He'll dismantle you quickly. All right, so in this scenario, a couple things are important. First of all, since I have to defend against my upper gate and my middle gate, and even possibly my leg, a little less of a problem here, but anywhere in this area is severe, I cannot put my shield high up here or my shield too low down in here, because he'll simply access the other point of entry. So what I have to do is cut the space in between both those areas so that I could adjust high or low if I had to, depending upon my needs in this situation. So keeping my hands close to me means that there's very little movement in here. I can literally drop my elbow a couple inches and protect my abdomen in here, and if he comes up to my face, I can raise my hand a few inches. I can essentially beat him to the targets I need to protect. Okay? So that's not true if my hands are out here. Notice that even with my blocking out in here, I have a lot of distance in order to travel backwards and forwards or bring my elbow back and in. You simply don't have time to do that in this scenario. So you have to cover up and you have to have a middle ground. First of all, let's put ourselves into a position effectively where I can do that. Now, a couple mistakes that are made. First, and most important mistake, do not bring your elbows out like this. All right, it does two things. Even though you think you might want to intersect with your elbows like this, he could get up inside here and gut me with this thing. He could also, as I pull my elbows too far away, he could flank me, come around to this side. All right, so really serious problem in that encounter. So try to keep your elbows as close as you can, at least for the first part of the engagement right here. You may extend them as you drive into him or collapse or crush his arms in here and attack. That's okay as long as you're effective. But the most important thing is not to extend my elbows. The next common mistake is a poor body position. And that can manifest itself in any number of ways. First of all, I got to have a drive leg, so we're not even going to go into that. You got to have one leg behind you in this scenario, because there's going to be some type of collision in here. So that being said, let's talk about the positions of the upper body in here. Now, if I bend over at my waist too much, and in other words, I try to sunk down and protect my upper body, he's going to come around the top in here, and it's going to be very difficult for me to extract my arms back up in this direction. So actually bringing the torso too horizontal is not good either. And obviously, if I stand up too straight in here, he can hit me in the lower bladder or abdomen or groin down in here. So you have to find a happy medium in here where your body is tucked in behind this weapon, where I can access both high and low gates as needed in this scenario. All right, so that's the whole idea. No matter where he comes, even if he came straight over the top, I should be able to cover at least enough to get some type of counterattack in. All right, so keeping the body in a functional position. Now, you have to find this. I can't teach it to you. You have to figure it out. So you need to get somebody who can actually attack you down in here and practice and find out where I'm too bent over, because I can deal with this, but I can't deal with that. Right? Or vice versa. I can stand up here and I got this, but my guts are open. So you have to find a position in here where I can function, at least dealing with this, at least for a split second. All right, so practice on finding your functional body position. Now, once you get the right position, the functional position, if you just practice, at speed a little bit with somebody, you'll begin to find out that this is about the only way I can stand toe-to-toe with somebody and survive a swarming knife attack, at least have even the opportunity of surviving. You certainly are going to get cut. But again, remember, we're going to minimize time frame and maximize force. We're going to end this. But in the process of learning, it's going to be a long and extended period of time in which you will basically be cut to ribbons in this process. But you try to keep your cuts isolated to areas that you could survive on the outer arm. So let's go through each one of the basic blocks. Even though these should be very fluid and you should find your own natural way of doing it, the idea is to stay as tight as you can. Remember, you're shielding, you're not blocking. All right, so that for instance, a line coming straight in to my body like this in this particular angle. All right, now what I'm not doing is I'm not reaching out and creating a block Very big mistake. What I'm doing is covering and deflecting. So there's two ways to do this. I can literally just drop down and bring my elbows in very, very close. And at that point, when it makes contact or I see it, I can actually deflect it one way or the other with a lower gate attack. So even if whether it's a slash, it's just going to cut my arms. But if it's penetrating thrust, we're going to want to take this and deflect it offline in here like this. See how I deflected it over there? All right, but I'm going to want to keep this in as close as I possibly can and not reach out and defend against it. As close as possible in this deflection. All right, so that's how we deal with the low gate. Okay, now down in here, he could thrust or he could try to go to my flanks, to my sides in here. And that's a simple process of just adjusting the elbow back around the body. And make sure it stays very, very close. Do not bring it out away from the body at all. As we come in here, so as he flanks around the side or tries to stick me in the side, I need to bring my elbow off that line and just literally put it where my ribs are. Keeping a functional body position, bringing it around, in here. That's how you're going to be able to survive this particular attack. So basically front and sides taken in this line. Okay, the other possibility is that he not only comes down into my gut area in here like this, but he tries to flank you on either sides. Now, it's critically important that you don't open your center line in this process, that the other hand compensates while we're doing this. So as we're coming around, I'm literally going to bring one of my arms over and the other one into my center line to protect this large area. So as we come around, I see a flank, I tuck this in close. Don't bring this away from the body at all. So as he comes in and I see this flank come around, I need to literally beat him to that target by dropping this elbow around to the side. Now, certainly I'm taking a stab, but it's better than losing my life. And again, as we deliver, bang, I'm going to deliver a secondary shot in here, or an initial attack almost immediately, and follow up on this guy. All right, so remember, that's always the process. So even though we're taking a hit, we're actually going in and finishing it as fast as we possibly can. Okay, so we're staying very, very tight and we're adjusting our elbows around our body. Now, if we take that same compact, compressed shielding idea and we bring it into the upper gate from chest to the top of the head in here, same basic principle, except now we're using our hands in here in order to do this most of the time. Again, remember, do not bring the hand too far up or try to block with too much of your arm in here, because as we bring our elbow away, we expose our stomach. You may be successful in this block, but you may be gutted in the next attack. So remember, that's the idea of the body shield. Stay between the high and the middle gates with your action. So essentially, when I'm down in here like this, what I'm going to do is I see a slash coming around the side of my head. I'm just going to cover this side of my head if I can and protect by bringing my hands up and flanking as much as I deem necessary. Notice also I'm compensating on this side with my protection down in here and by adjusting my arms. I'm not just coming up here and exposing my abdomen like this. So as he attacks me to this side, I literally bring that hand just far enough up to protect. I may, again, take this shot or take this slash, but I'm okay in that process. So even if he comes around the other side in here, you're just rising just enough just to stay as compact as I possibly can and deliver a counterattack. Now, perhaps the most difficult line of attack is obviously the most direct. So a slash which comes right straight at you, or it's coming straight on the line here like this, is very, very difficult to see. So you need to keep your vision focused and ready for that quick attack. You're going to deal with this primarily two different ways. You're going to bring one hand up and deflect across your body. You're also going to try to instinctively move a little bit with this and knock this thing out of the way. Remember, don't bring your elbow out away from you too far or bring your hand up. You're just functionally blocking or parrying or deflecting as little as possible. If you can avoid this just with slight head movements in here and keep yourself covered in the process, that will be effective also. Keep your hands where you can use them. So as he comes in here like this, just a short, quick deflection to keep my hand up in line in here, again, it will work. Anything that reaches out, he's just going to pass and control and come around, and then I get into the blocking process and I'm going to miss one of these particular actions. But the idea is now that if I keep very compact, I'm going to be able to move in and get on top of this guy and cause some damage almost immediately. Okay, let's take a slight step back now and get you into a few drills that allow you to understand the reality of the dynamic combat body shield against a blade. Let's take you through a drill in which you're going to practice the blocking process. So what you want to do is get something like they use it, Dana Abbott's Action Flex or something like this, that you can actually hit with full force and not cause any damage in here and make contact. You probably should put goggles on, particularly, and protect your face and even your throat if you want to, or some mask, as long as you can see in here. But basically, protect your just the primary targets for your defense. And then what you're going to want to do is practice trying to block at close range. No evasion, very little reaction time. Stay toe-to-toe with this person. So we should be able to literally reach out and touch him. Don't back up and get out of the way. That's cheating. All right, so we're assuming he's right on top of you. What we need to do now is practice. Go ahead and practice any form of blocking or trapping or controlling you think you can do. And the attacker is instructed not to let you get a hold of him and to cut you in every possible angle, particularly from here to here, as much as possible. Now, if he comes in ones and twos and you're like this, you may be effective in this initial attack, pretty effective with the initial motion in here. All right, that's easy. All right, don't play that game. All right, play for real. When somebody comes in, he comes multiple times, or he comes in and slashes in multiple angles in here like this. Slash, stab. It's all over the place. That's how it happens in reality in here. So don't play this onesie and twosie game where I got you, I'm in control. That's bull. Okay, what we need to do is get in here and practice coming at you. And okay, he's going to try to cut me in all sorts of angles. Pretty much I'm hamburger right now. No matter how good you are, you're only going to get a couple before he takes you out in this scenario. So once we've got that basic idea that I'm probably not going to be able to block, then we can start on the reality that you're going to need to shield and take this guy out within the next 2 seconds. All right, so now that we're in the shielding game, go ahead and get down. Right or left stance doesn't make any difference in here. And tuck yourself in and start very slow and practice letting him pull the blade out and just doing as little as you can possibly do in here in order to deflect, compensating with the other hand. All right, so if one hand goes up, for instance, in here, the other one is down here to protect. Never bring both your hands into a gate like this. All right, so as we're coming up, I'm bringing a hand here, this hand staying down and compensating with this tight shield. Notice now that he's going to, even though it looks like he's getting me, he's only cutting me on the surface. He's not getting in. Okay, so we do this faster now. All right, so notice that it becomes quicker. Our elbows may come a little bit further away, but the essential principle is that what I'm doing is blocking and protecting as much as I possibly can. So if you can survive even 10 seconds of that, you're way, way ahead of the game, because in reality, all I need is 1 second in order to deliver what I'm going to do and trap and control. I need only one defense. Before we get into the actual defensive drill, I'd like to talk a moment about your vision. Now, your eyes are essentially cameras for your brain. They record the essential information that you need to instinctively react and survive. The key is to keep your cameras clear, keep them open the entire time. You're not going to have a second chance when dealing with a blade, and a blade can come incredibly fast at a lot of different angles. You may be able to recognize a type of punch or a type of kick, but a slash may come at some strange angle. You've got to instinctively just kind of follow it and catch it as it comes in. So in order to do this, you must keep your eyes wide open. You can blink because that's an instinctive primal response. We can't stop ourselves from blinking, but you cannot flinch. There's a main difference between those two things. A blink is 100th of a second, where my eyelids close. You can blink, and you will blink in a scenario. A flinch is where I not only close my eyes, but I essentially turn the camera in here. I shy away from an initial action. You cannot afford that in this type of encounter. Armed or unarmed, that's one of the worst things that you can do. So you need to practice keeping your eyes wide open and tell yourself that my best chance to survive this encounter is to see it coming. That's my only chance. I must see it coming. Even if I catch a glimpse of it, I have a chance of stopping it and counterattacking. So practice training yourself to keep your eyes wide open and watch the entire fight as it happens. Okay, now remember, the concept of shielding, of protecting your body, is more important than the specific techniques. So sometimes in defense you may reach out a little bit more, violate a principle, but as long as you pull back and come back in, as long as you're not cut, the end result applies then. You're alive. You survived it. So try to stay as compact and tight as you can. But we're going to challenge that ability by having a person with two blades now. Get two action flex, or two something that you can use that won't harm you one way or the other. And if you can practice surviving this against a swarm of attacks coming in both sides, and even get close to surviving for like 4 seconds or 5 seconds and more, you're way ahead of the game when somebody tries to come at you with a single blade and 1 or 2 slashes. All right, so start very, very slow and build up. So take your drill slow, keep your vision focused on this guy and concentrate on just protecting this initial attack in here. And just making sure that he doesn't get through this action. All right? Protect, protect, protect. Go ahead and play that back in slow motion and see if I got stabbed. I did get stabbed in my arms, but nothing got through to my body. That's what you want to try to remember. Nothing gets through to your body. We'll talk about the counter and how to end that next. Now let's go into counterattacking. As stated many times before, one of the most common misconceptions about my shield in application against the blade is that we're passive about it. Now I hope that you only have to shield once in this encounter before you end this fight, but that may not be the case. The person may be very, very quick, deliver 2 or 3 attacks, you may have to stop it. But the bottom line is your intent is either to extricate myself out of this situation or to get at point blank range and finish him off. There is no middle ground. There's no gray area. Gray areas get you killed. Gray areas turn red with blood. So I need to make sure that I'm either inside or I'm away. So my first option when this happens is to teach myself, if something happens at close range, if somebody draws a weapon on me at close range, I do not want to block this process out in here. All right, because this may be the last thing I do before I talk to God in this scenario, right? So what I wanted to realize is that proximity will determine my tactical response. If I'm out here and I've got a little bit more distance on this guy and he comes at me in here, yeah, move. Absolutely. You may actually block on the process of moving, that's fine, because I pulled myself out of the way. But the moment I'm standing close on this person, to do that is extremely dangerous in here. I may miss and get myself killed in this scenario. So once I get close, evasion disappears, at least momentarily, and the shield takes precedence. So if I'm standing close and this individual comes to me in here, I need to be able to shield immediately into this attack in order to protect. That's really my only chance. Now once I get this shield off, there's no reason why I can't simply push him off and move and grab another weapon or do something else in this scenario. That's just fine. Remember, you should evade if you can. But the bottom line is, I'm going to have to use my shield in close when this thing happens to protect my life before I do something else. So you need to practice shield and escape until it becomes instinct at close range. Okay, now let's talk about situations in which I want to or I must immediately counter. A must is a situation in which I cannot move out of range. So I'm cornered, there's a car behind me or something in which I cannot move. I don't have the luxury of evasion. So if I sit here and become passive with this shield, he's going to find a way through. This is not impenetrable. A smart martial artist will trap you or grab or get control where you have to dissolve into something else. That becomes a serious problem in this encounter. So we're going to try to use at least the element of surprise to survive. And again, end the fight within the shortest possible time frame here. All right, so don't hide behind the shield. So again, I must counter immediately to be effective. Counter or escape. So once you shield, if you cannot run away and get out of here like this, you're going to have to immediately counterattack and come in. So contrary to what most people believe is functional, I'm going to try to get as close to this person as I possibly can as I shield. Distance is dangerous to me, all right, because out in here like this, as I throw an attack, if he leans back even a little bit, and then I have to deal with him with whatever's occurring in here. I got a serious problem with that. But what I want to do is literally, as I come down in here like this, is get right, see where I am? Right on top of him. See where his hands are? In here. I want to get right on top of this guy in a strong, stable position. All right, even if I have to slam into him to make this happen, that's fine for a split second, because I don't have to stay right here. All right, but what I am going to do is tear your head off at this point. Gouge the eyes, go for the throat, smash him with an elbow, deliver several strikes into the face, increasing in power as we deliver this attack. But don't stop. Stay on top of him and finish him. Don't give him a second chance. Finish it. All right, so if we cannot escape, and we have to move in immediately, we have to be both stable and mobile. We have to move quickly, but we have to stabilize so that we're not knocked over and we don't get into a grappling situation. So the same principles of having a strong drive leg, lowering your knees and staying structurally strong is important in this situation. But what I have to do is I have to be able to move very quickly, short range, and keep this stability. All right, staying in a very tight position. So what I want to do is practice going into a tight shield in here, maybe even practice a deflection or a block off of here and move directly into the target. Bam! Real quick. And once I've got that process down, where I'm pretty comfortable going from wherever I am into a shield and moving into the target in here like that, I want to practice countering. So the good part about the shield is we don't have to load anything. Literally, as I drop into the shield, both my hands are in shot put positions like this. Incredibly powerful. If you had a 16-pound weight in your hand, you could fire that thing into the air right here with a lot of force. So a palm strike coming up from this position right into the target like this is incredibly powerful and effective. Fist strikes are the same thing. Elbows, anything coming in off this line. So you want to stay very, very tight and compact. Contract on defense and dramatically expand powerfully on offense and take the hit. So a good drill is to push bags or run in very, very close and practice hitting as hard as you can and escalate as many times as possible at close range. Now, once you can close in a compact manner, in a loaded manner, ready to launch your attacks, you need to be aware of the fact that if I get a successful strike off, just repeat it usually. So if I'm actually defending in here like this and I come in very, very tight, once I've got an initial strike in here, there's no reason why I just don't keep going. If one is good, again, bang, maybe expanding in the action in here. So as we actually defend again, boom, 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 boom. Increasing in power and force each time we hit. Just stay on top of the guy and hit. If he starts to move or check or you have to follow the weapon, that's fine, but stay right with him the whole time hitting in whatever weapon you choose. Do not get any idea that, go ahead, that we're going to pick targets in here. I'm hitting all sorts of different areas. Do not switch if something is working. Stay right on top of him, but just try to hit him more in the throat, in the eye, in the cranium, wherever you can get a shot in here and deliver as much power, as much repetition, increasing in force as you possibly can. End the fight. The best strike is always the one that hits, the one that takes effect. But I'm going to give you a few specific ones that are best for this type of scenario. As vicious as we possibly can be using maximum force. So, for example, best strike you've got is either a fist into the throat in here, delivering into the throat area as hard as you possibly can, because usually you're down underneath, you're down underneath this situation. So rising up into the chin, into the throat, you're going to catch something in here this way. Just keep it simple, and I don't recommend you bring your elbows out into a cross like this because you'll start to open up your ribs. Remember, we want to keep our arms down in protecting our body as much as we can in here. But a better strike than that is also with the empty hand is a palm strike, because it's so powerful, catching him right above the chin into the face at about a 45-degree angle on most people, unless they're shifted positions, and then I'm going to have to shift with them, right? But essentially coming up underneath him, bisecting his head at 45 degrees is a fantastic target shot. All right? Taking my hands and open this up and gouging them, going upward again, boom, into the eye sockets really hard at this angle is a good shot also, which if you do that quick enough or hit quick enough, a lot of times it'll expose his throat. So keeping my hand down in here, actually driving the inside palm like this into the throat can be a potentially lethal shot. So turning my hand from here to here can be very, very effective. But remember, don't change these unless they present the opportunity and it just happens. It's just going to be bang, bang, okay, there's his throat, smack into here. Or gouge the eyes in order to draw his head back, bang, or fist into the throat. So keep it really simple. Elbow into the sternum, elbow up to the face if you've got a good shot. It does expose your ribs, but make sure that's usually a finishing action. So anything that I can do in here to keep this buzzsaw going and blast through this person before he has an opportunity to use that knife again is what I want to do. So to take inventory of your most lethal arsenal and practice those. In dynamic combat, the basic level of defenses are covered by developing instinctive evasive responses and counters, and developing maximum protection and counter, an aggressive protection and counter system. So using that as a primary principle in here, we can kind of start to put this together. But before we actually do that, it needs to be said that we always adhere to what we call the ATW principle. ATW stands for anything that works. So in a scenario, we never discount the possibility that any one of the other options may be the most appropriate thing to do at any given moment in a scenario. The whole trick is for you to survive. How you do that is pretty irrelevant. But most of the time, the other techniques carry with them too many liabilities for us to have, to deploy all the time. So we're going to try to stack the deck and simplify it down. Remember I said that distance, the time distance variable, really determines my tactics involved in a situation. So the further away I am, the more time I have to react, and vice versa. The closer I am, the less time. So as I've got some distance in the proximity, I want to use more instinctive, evasive actions. I want to use my footwork and my body evasion to stay away and hopefully just escape or escalate to a greater weapon. So for example, if something happens at a slight distance out of here, I want to be able to move, and if I have to, bang, deliver a counterattack almost immediately in here, along with an evasive action, right? But like I said before, if something happens kind of jump out of the bushes deal, geez, I need to come in quickly and deliver an almost immediate counterattack because I wasn't aware or it happened at very, very close range. So anytime you're surprised or anytime you're in a very confined environment, you need to concentrate on going into your shield. All right? The only caveat to that is to remember that I don't stay passive. I've got to train myself that if I shield, boom, I counterattack almost immediately. And that counterattack becomes immediate and effective and brutal in this scenario. All right, so either way, you're going to have to end the fight one way or the other, either by escaping or by countering. But in the process, you can use instinctive evasion or I can use a shield, and those should solve most of your problems. Later on, in more advanced tapes, we'll deal with more advanced techniques. But I suggest that you get a weapon or a set of tools that you can work with that won't harm you, that create some reality. And I suggest you sit down and try it. If you do, I think you'll reach some of the same conclusions I have over the last decade. Look for more dynamic combat takes on this subject. Thanks. Take care and stay safe.